opposite. Instead of calm and quiet, he was a bit of a hothead, but still dependable. He was our designated
Match
heavy
found.
gunner, carrying his M240 Bravo machine gun, with Marks as his assistant gunner. The Major split us up into 2 teams of 3, with myself, Marks, and Corshane together. It was our team that observed when the war changed course for the first time. It was a cloudy night, the 3 of us wrapping up training with our assigned Wolverines. You could hear the distant roar of jet engines somewhere above, another B-52 strike behind enemy lines. For whatever reason, the aliens weren't able to shoot down from space, probably because they never imagined they'd have to. Instead, they learned to shoot up. A bright beam of blue light shot up into the sky from somewhere far away, and then there was a dull roar and a bright flash of orange light. The aliens had deployed some type of very high-energy laser system. Just like that, the Air Force was off the front lines. From then on, they'd only be launching standoff attack munitions from well past the range of these blue death beams. The air advantage we'd enjoyed just got nullified. But what was most chilling to me was just how quickly the aliens had adapted and deployed new technology. If we were going to win, we needed to do it fast. Day 50. When under ambush, the winning tactic is to turn into the ambush and assault through it. Remaining in the kill zone is only going to get you dead. This is not what the aliens did. A couple of bricks of C4 were enough to destroy the lead vehicle, some sort of heavy IFV. The heavy armor still allowed the Elf infantry to dismount from the rear, though I only counted 8 out of 14 possible passengers. Didn't matter because they were cut down as Corshane opened up with the 240. A second explosion rung out from the second set of hidden C4, disabling the rear vehicle. 2 javelins reached out and smashed into the escort IFVs, but only one managed to kill. The other was disabled, but still deadly, as we quickly found out when it turned its turret and opened fire on one of the javelin teams, shredding them with those weird glowing cannon rounds. Since we were in such close quarters, the javelins couldn't hit in top attack mode. At just over 80 yards, we could only hit them in direct attack mode, targeting the thinner side armor. A third javelin silenced the Elf IFV, knocking the deadly turret out of the fight just a few seconds too late. The Elf infantry carried weird, long, skinny rifles, which reminded me of the way they themselves were built. But what came out of them packed a wallop. Their rounds could punch through light cover, as many of our troops had found out the hard way, so you had to make sure you had something solid like brick or stone between you and them. They fired a lot faster than our rifles, but like their ship-mounted turrets, suffered from accuracy issues. The M4 has no such accuracy issues.
Scanning ahead. There they are. Shock dart.
Next.
And the U.S. Army places a premium on marksmanship for its infantry. Even our partisan friends were proving to be crack shots. You'd have to be to survive a month behind enemy
Last
lines.
player
The
standing.
firefight was brief and furious,
One
but
enemy
we were
remaining.
supposed to take one alive.
Spike
That
down,
meant getting
B.
up close and personal. I called out to one of the Wolverines and had him take over Mark's role, feeding Corshane ammo, and the 2 of us dashed downstairs from the roof we'd been using as our base of fire. We had a pair of basic short-range walkie-talkies,
Spike
and I sent the
planted.
code word out to Major Hooper. Geronimo. We were going in for a snatch and grab. A few moments later, the volume of fire from our side rose significantly. They were forcing the aliens to take cover and screen our approach.
Clutch.
We dashed out a rear door and ran down a block of
superior.
buildings to come out from behind them at the tail of the ambush kill zone. The rearmost IFV was here, a smoking wreck from the C4 booby trap, and I scanned for any wounded, with no luck as we rushed up behind it. The Wolverines and Corshane were doing a good job keeping the elves' heads down. We could see a group of them trying to return fire while taking cover, too preoccupied to see us rush up behind them. We scanned up and down the line of vehicles, counting 16 dead elves.
Revealing area.
I win again.
Spike down A.
A fine death.
Trap destroyed. Here, spikes A.
Right here.
Gun here. Hit.
Shock dart.
enemy remaining.
Shame you had to die, but you are not part of my bigger picture. Gun
Deep breaths, everyone. Your hearts are pounding.
Ready. Revealing area. Found them.
Careful now.
Spike down A. Last player standing.
Oh my god, my bad.
Spike planted. One enemy remaining.
Nice, bro.
Clutch.
Did you see their faces? Sorry, I should not laugh.
Who else is having a great time?
Need a
Just
drop.
me.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
I'm gutted.
Here.
Scanning ahead.
Enemy B.
Fire in the hole!
One drop, one drop. One plus.
Spike planted.
Someone's A. Enemy A.
Last player standing.
Nice, nice, nice. One bit.
So, we have to kill my double? So be it. I can buy for you. My
The
trip.
survivors seemed to be in 3 groups, and the one in front of us was separated by line of sight from the other 2. I radioed Major Hubrak, giving him a very brief synopsis of my plan. He sent back a simple affirmative. We kept our transmission short, using lots of code words, just in case the aliens had learned to listen for our comms and were learning English. On the Major's order, a series of grenades exploded out of our line of sight, and somewhere near
Scanning ahead. Shock dart. Shock dart.
Shadows traveling.
I am the hunter! Take flight. Revealing area.
Airdrop. I mean, stay AK.
Right here.
Last player standing.
One middle.
I'm the last thing they'll see before they die. Lucky them.
I can buy a share.
Need a drop. Thanks.
I can buy one more share.
You're the first and second group of L's. That was our signal, and Marks and I stepped out from behind cover, rifles at the ready. The aliens' entire focus was on the heavy fire they were receiving from the rooftops, but
Scanning ahead.
Spike down A.
Race drop.
Shock dart. Deploying drone.
Spike planted. Last player
area.
standing.
There they are.
Good deck.
A bow and arrow is old-fashioned. Sometimes old ways are best.
at the last moment, one of them must have turned around to reload his weapon or something, because he spotted Marks and I and started hooting out in that strange melodic way. It was too late. Marks and I opened fire, two in
I
the
always play one drop.
You want to play? Let's play.
Scanning ahead.
And smoke. One drop. Tower. Tower.
One enemy remaining. Last player standing.
Again.
Blinding.
I'll go tower. Tower.
No charges. I will take back what is mine.
Need a drop.
Thank you.
chest and one in the head. 4 elves in this position, 3 dead within seconds. The survivor seemed in a state of shock as I rushed forward, knocking his weapon.
Revealing area.
Joke's over! You're dead!
Shock dart.
Spike down A. Last player standing.
Ready, bro.
Weapon choice. It is so personal, no?
You pick a gun and it tells me who you are.
Save. Yeah, I'm saving.
Here.
Scanning ahead.
AA.
Cover going out. Cover going out.
Fire in the hole! Spike planted. Last player standing.
Weapon out of his hands and bringing the butt of my rifle down on his head. He was out, and Marks helped me drag him back toward the building, seizing his rifle as a bonus prize. Then it all went to hell. A strange metallic sound, bright flashes, and heat. We were inside a building when it happened, or else I'm sure we would have been toast alongside most of the Wolverines. I barely had time to look outside and see the large spinning disc-shaped aircraft as it dropped another salvo of those large glowing spikes, annihilating both friend and foe. The alien
Revealing area. A fine death.
Face your fear!
Two drop. One main.
Enemy A.
Spike planted.
Terminus.
Cutting their
Careful now. Going up.
One enemy remaining.
One blade.
defuse the spike.
Aliens had learned how to use air support. Maybe not expertly, but they killed a lot more of ours than their own.
Team
Days
Ace.
51 to 56. Of our original squad, only Major Holbrook, myself, Marks, and Crochet remained. Wood and a handful of Wolverines lived, most of them injured. The greatest casualties had come from the strange flying craft dropping those rocks to most of them over the place, hitting friend and foe and leveling several blocks of buildings. It was overkill, but I guess the aliens were getting annoyed at how many casualties they were taking during an operation at what was supposed to be their safe rear areas. Well, welcome to war, human style. I thought I'd accidentally killed our alien friend. It took him over a day to come to.
Revealing area.
Enemy spotted me.
Take flight.
We're down.
One enemy remaining. Spike down B.
There. Spike is B.
Reloaded.
Still inside.
Shot done. Scanning ahead.
Last round in the half.
Expendables, does anyone?
Anyone have funds?
Does anyone have funds?
We treated his head wound best we could, but truthfully knowing very little about alien biology, there wasn't much we could have done if he'd been seriously injured. Luckily, it seemed he only had a mild concussion. While we licked our wounds, nobody talked to him.
You want to play? Let's play.
Revealing area.
Two up. Okay.
Shot done.
Oh, one OP.
Scanning ahead.
Spike planted. One enemy remaining.
Reloading. Defuse this spike. Reloading. Reloading.
It is over. Scanning ahead.
Switching sides.
My burden never ends.
Major wanted to isolate him, soften him up mentally for the long trip back to friendly lines. I got the feeling this wasn't the first time.
Amazon.sg 11/11 sale is here. Get epic deals on electronics. You
Offered for Wood to join us on our journey back to the front. Maybe the army didn't want him before because of his leg, but he'd more than proven his worth. Besides, something told me the U.S. Army was currently
Revealing area.
Enemy B. Someone's A. Phoenix healed.
Enemy spotted B. One enemy remaining.
Dink. Dink.
90, 90.
One tap, one tap.
Right.
Nice.
experiencing severe manpower shortages. Reluctantly, he agreed. There weren't enough healthy Wolverines to continue operating behind enemy lines. It would be safer for them to cease activities here anyway. If the elves were willing to inflict that much collateral damage as a fire support mission, what would they do to local civilians in retaliation to more raids? Gathering our prisoner, we left for the long march back to friendly lines. Days 61 to 63. At first we only traveled at night, but then we realized our elf friend was having obvious difficulty seeing in bright daylight. It made sense, the Major said, because of
Revealing area.
Careful now. No, you don't. Spike planted.
Shock dart.
One enemy remaining.
Enemy and defender spawn.
Shock dart.
Ropes.
Scanning ahead.
Flawless.
Take aim, Zenfire. Let's not complicate it.
of those large black eyes. They were clearly meant to gather as much light as possible, so the aliens must have evolved in a low-light planet. Given that they probably had superior night vision technology anyway, it only made sense to travel when they'd be naturally disadvantaged. The fact that our friend was slightly more sluggish in the day made us suspect.
I'll flash early.
Scanning ahead.
Sorry. One more.
Last player standing.
Out of charges.
The species might be nocturnal, or maybe he just had bad jet lag after crossing millions and millions of miles of empty space. He, she, it didn't talk much. It seemed
They're
to
just
accept its fate,
viruses.
not
We
even
need
putting up a
everything.
struggle when we got up each dawn to march. The Major kept it fed with what seemed like rations he'd salvaged from one of the destroyed vehicles, but I could tell he was limiting its food, keeping it strong enough to walk but too weak to resist. Again, I got the impression this wasn't the first time the Major had done this sort of thing. Days 64 to 69. We couldn't be too far from the front now because we could hear the sounds of battle in the distance. It was the unmistakable sound of armored vehicles, both alien and human, clashing in what must have been one titanic jousting match. Looking through binoculars, we could even spot a formation of elf artillery, spitting its strange but deadly globs of green glowing stuff that exploded with terrible force when it hit the ground. Whatever it was, it expanded after impact and then just vaporized everything within its blast radius. I'd seen even Abrams tanks cut neatly in half. The alien artillery lobbed round after round downrange, but then suddenly explosions broke out amongst the concentration of guns. Counter battery fire. I guess the green glowing crap did register on radar, and our boys were quick on the trigger. The enemy had yet to learn how to shoot and score.
One
It
enemy
was far too
remaining.
dangerous to travel, so we set up camp hidden in a grove of woods and monitored the situation.
Last player
Battle lines
standing.
seemed to stay pretty much the same, and our vantage point gave us a great view of the enemy's rear areas where they were towing damaged vehicles and even setting up what I was guessing a field hospital or command post. I was itching to get on the radio so we could broadcast their coordinates, but the Major vigorously refused. The elves could track our signal, and bringing this one back alive was more important than 1 or 2 fire missions. 3 days after setting up camp to wait for the battle to end, the elves set up new artillery, this time further back from the front and closer to us. This time it got eradicated by long-range cruise missile strikes. The aliens were learning very hard lessons, and it seemed like no matter how much of their equipment was destroyed, it just kept on coming. They'd have to run out eventually, right? Days 70 to 73. The battle finally ended, and I don't think we were on the winning side given the fact that a steady stream of
Revealing area.
Smoking.
Sleep, brother.
Blinding tower.
Shot that.
Blinding tower.
Not ready yet. Out of charges.
One enemy remaining.
I got it. Tower. Nice.
elf vehicles and troops was slowly moving toward the former sounds of battle. Another retreat by U.S. forces with the aliens moving troops up to secure newly taken territory. The Major tried to cheer us up. The U.S. was trading territory for time, he said, overextending the enemy by waging a slow fighting retreat. It made sense, and I hoped he was right, and we weren't in actual full-blown retreat. We kept our friend gagged while enemy troops were near, though he never showed any sign of wanting to escape or call out for help. Major Holbrook suspected that this species was unified to the point of...
You want to play? Let's play.
Cutting their vision.
Careful now.
Scanning ahead. Deploying drone.
Reloading. Sorry, bro. Bunch you guys defend the spawn.
Spike down A. Last player standing.
utter codependency. Humans are naturally independent, occasionally working together. The elves seem to be the exact opposite, naturally dependent and occasionally working alone. Explains why they never learned how to wage war on their own planet. With the
You will own nothing, and you will be happy. That is what Bill Gates, that's what the other elites envision for you, because they think you're dumb. And I mean, in all fairness, I don't actually blame them, because for the last 3 years, they took away your
front, now swarming with elf supply and logistics troops. Our best...
Scanning ahead.
chance was to slip through a crack in the front lines and hopefully not get shot down by our own guys while doing it. Days 74 to 79. I think I've learned the words for bathroom break and food in elf speak. Well, it'd be more accurate to call them sounds instead of words, because it seems like the entire elf language is a mix of melodic sounds that reminded me of wind chimes and whale songs. The shorter the sound, the more urgent the meaning seemed to be. How the hell were we going to decipher this language and ever communicate was well beyond me. We avoided population centers on our way to cross the front, and I was glad to. I knew what was waiting in those freshly occupied cities and towns, the corpses of anyone young enough to fight, and then a ghost town full of elderly and very young. It was unsettling to an extreme degree, and I wondered why the elves didn't simply kill everyone off. What did they want humans alive for? Why did they even invade our planet with all that real estate available in the galaxy? I'd eventually find out why, and once again, I wish I never had. Days 80 to 82. We ran
30
into
seconds
enemy
left.
control completely by accident, and maybe we'd become too complacent. The elves didn't seem to leave the main roads and thoroughfares much, and we'd never seen sign of them deep in the woods that we were using to cover our travel. More than likely, though, we were
Last
just
player
tired,
standing.
physically and emotionally exhausted, as we contemplated the fate of not just our nation, but our world. Our two groups nearly ran head-on
seems
into
these
each other as
strangers
we
want me
both turned a
dead.
corner at the same time on the heavily forested dirt road. The lead alien gave us off to a surprise as he nearly collided with Major Holbrook, who was taking point.
Need a
Our
drop.
two groups stood still for a moment
Thank
in
you.
utter shock. Our captive gave off what sounded like an inquisitive hoot.
Need a
But
drop.
the Major didn't freeze like the rest of us did. His instincts kicked in, immediately disarming the lead elf and sending an elbow into his solar plexus or whatever the aliens had in place.
Revealing area.
Come on, let's go!
Joke's over! You're dead!
Someone's A.
Deploying drone. I am the hunter!
Of a solar plexus. Human martial arts had yet to adapt to alien physiology, but the attack worked as the alien crumpled at the Major's feet, gasping for breath. The rest of us then raised our rifles and started firing nearly blank range at each other.
Last player
Marks
standing.
went down in a hail of alien gunfire, and with an enraged roar, Corshane unloaded into them. His heavy 240 had gotten slagged by the alien aircraft during the ambush, and he opted to travel instead with an older but much lighter M249 light machine gun. The 249 barked out
30 seconds
5.56mm rounds at a rate of 200 rounds a minute, all of them at terrifyingly close range. Accuracy was shit as he hip-fired the weapon. But then again, his targets were literally feet in front of him. 4 of the aliens were cut down, with the Major narrowly avoiding being hit himself. I turned my attention on the 5th surviving alien who had dove for cover in the tree line, popping off several rounds as I plunged
One
in after
enemy
him.
remaining.
The brush was thick. I couldn't let him get away and let his buddies know we were out here. As I crashed past a thick bush, the elf nearly took my head off with a large, thin blade. I ducked under it by instinct and raised my rifle, and nothing. Misfire. The alien lunged again, and I managed to stop his downward thrust into my chest by grabbing onto the hilt of his weapon. Despite being thin and lanky, the elf was surprisingly strong, but obviously lacking self-defense skills. I grabbed his wrist and swept his legs out from underneath him, tumbling him to the ground. With a quick jerk, I heard the satisfying snapping sound of a wrist breaking, causing him to drop his blade and give off a series of low moans. Then I grabbed my own knife, put a knee in his chest, and stopped. What now? I'd never killed in close quarters before, and even if this was an alien, it was still a living being. Killing someone through a rifle scope or even iron sights is one thing, but this felt like murder. The Major and
Revealing area. Nowhere to run! Shock dart.
Copy, watch out. Nice, bro.
On my way.
OP in B.
Take flight.
Go A, maybe. 2 in B. Fate and Chamber in B. Maybe Ops and Phoenix on A. Or spawn.
Face your fear! Fire in the hole! Last player standing.
Ready.
You want me serious? You got it.
Wood came crashing through the woods. I could hear Korshane howling in fury somewhere on the road behind them. Wood carried our prisoner in tow. "What do I do with this one?" I asked the Major. His answer was brief and decisive. With one smooth motion, he whipped out his sidearm and put a round through the alien's forehead. "Can't bring another one with us. Too much risk." Days.
Bullseye.
Nice kill.
Scanning ahead.
Oh, big gun kit.
Take flight.
Copy on kit. Oh, nice bro.
Tower.
Phoenix arcade. Wait on city. Hold on.
One enemy remaining.
Nice, last city.
Enemy B.
Nice.
The symphony of death. Need a drop. Thank you.
Thank you.
'83 to '87. Korshane wasn't the same after Marks' death. The two had been polar opposites. Marks
Leading edge technology, science, and sport.
the way he was
Revealing area.
Joke's over! You're dead!
Watch out. Fall back.
Cover going out.
Deploying drone.
Blind tower.
Blinding.
Nice. One city.
Revealing area.
One tower.
Last player standing.
Dead.
handling his grief. I also worried he'd snap our captive's neck one night while we
Match
made camp.
point.
Our elf friend too seemed changed after the firefight in the woods. He'd been cooperative the entire time, or at least non-resistant. Now he just seemed defeated. His shoulders noticeably slumped as we walked along. Maybe we killed someone he knew. Maybe he wasn't even a real soldier, just some supply grunt that had been given a gun and told to help protect his convoy. Or maybe he had an idea of the fate that awaited him once we crossed the front and had seen his last chance for salvation
Let
come
us
and
hunt.
go. I was surprised to find myself pitying this.
You want to play?
Standing ahead.
Let's play.
Shot dart.
Let's go!
Side.
Someone's A.
Reloading.
Destroyed.
Still inside. Done.
Blinding.
One enemy remaining.
Strange pinkish alien. After traveling with the Major for 3 months, I knew that whatever awaited him could
Switching
not be
sides.
good. One part of my brain said
Overtime.
we had a war to win, at any cost. It was literally the survival of the species at stake. The other part of me, the part that used to look up at the night sky and wonder instead of terror, wondered just what made us humans to begin with. Were
Need a
we
drop.
risking losing that just to win? If we were willing to do the horrible things I was sure was coming to this elf, did we deserve to survive? Days 88 to 91. We must have crossed the front without even realizing it because we were found by our own people. I nearly opened fire by reflex when the recon squad of Marines seemed to materialize from out of the bushes ahead of us and around us. The aliens had been trying to infiltrate behind enemy lines the way we did. They just weren't any good at it. The
Eyes
Marines
up.
guided us at
Scanning ahead. Shock dart.
Spike planted.
My bad. 3 tower.
I can't.
Nice. Oh. One arcade, pit arcade.
Last player standing.
At a fast clip through secret forest paths to a small clearing. 15 minutes later, a Blackhawk came flying in very low
Switching
and very
sides.
fast.
Single
The Marines
Match
yelling at us
point.
to hurry up and load in. The chopper would loiter for only 30 seconds and definitely leave without us on it. If we weren't on board by then. Seems the aliens had gotten a lot.
Revealing area.
My ultimate's ready. Come on, let's go. Spike planted.
One enemy remaining.
Last. Oh, number one. Last save.
Better at targeting aircraft even across the front lines. Flying at dizzying speeds at what I swear was only inches above the ground. I found myself breathing a sigh of relief. My first one in nearly 3 months. Days 92 to 96. Rest and relaxation,
Switching sides.
medical treatments for wounds and bug bites, plenty of chow for reconstitution. Despite being in the middle of a fight for the planet, life was temporarily pretty good. The Major and our elf friend were nowhere to be seen, though. We were somewhere outside of Denver. We'd first engaged the aliens somewhere just over the border in Kansas. They pushed us back nearly 200 miles. While recovering, we got caught up on how the war was going. The alien
I've got you, bruv. Here, what you got?
Revealing area.
Checkmate.
A fine death.
Nice.
Shock dart. Shock dart.
Enemy spotted B.
Ding.
Enemy spotted.
Back kill.
Spike down
One
B.
tower.
Reload.
Enemy
B.
Phoenix killed.
Spike planted.
Fire in the hole!
incident major landings between San Diego and Los Angeles, outside Seattle, Las
Face
Vegas,
your fear!
Fargo and Austin, Texas,
Last player
Nashville, North
standing.
Carolina, Atlanta, Baltimore, and Randolph in New York State. We had defeated one minor landing
One
somewhere in
enemy remaining.
Pennsylvania, eradicating the entire invasion force and seizing several surviving pieces of equipment for study. Though all the landings had been opposed, our forces were in slow but steady retreat at every location except one. The Baltimore landing had succeeded in taking the city, but the U.S. Army had held the alien offensive at bay outside Washington, D.C. The Air Force had paid a particularly gruesome toll for the successful defense of the city, flying combat missions even in the face of those new laser beam cannons. The offensive
Switching
to take the
sides.
political heart of the United
Match
States was
point.
halted, at least for now. Everywhere else was fighting retreat.
Don't hold back.
Scanning ahead.
Someone's being here.
Deploying drone.
On my way.
Enemy spotted A.
Felix and Roy's team.
Trading territory for time. The rest of the world didn't seem to be faring much better, though it was getting harder and harder to communicate. The aliens had finally started to dismantle our communications networks. We had contact with Europe through undersea cables the aliens seemed unaware of. The Cold War had prepared us well for an alien invasion, as NATO envisioned how to fight and coordinate a strategy in a world ravaged by complete nuclear warfare. The European Union had lost all of Eastern Europe. Nobody had heard much of Russia since Moscow fell. There were confirmed reports of nuclear detonations from the direction of Russia, though. To date, they seemed the only power to resort to nukes. The aliens apparently didn't like it much. Rumors are they dropped several building-sized asteroids on Russian cities in response. It seems as though they were willing to put up with every underhanded tactic we had, except nukes. Which means they wanted our world intact and relatively unpoisoned. News from Asia was sporadic. The Japanese were fighting for every inch of their island, and given the aliens absolute hell, China communicated sporadically with the West. Aliens had seized Shanghai and Hong Kong, along with a few other major cities. Beijing stood strong and free. Like in every other occupied territory, though, the reports were all the same. All men and women of fighting age were exterminated, only the elderly and children remained. Days 97 to 99. Something big was brewing, and I feared it was another retreat. Nobody was hurrying to pack up equipment, though, but no one would tell Shane and I what was going on.
Scanning ahead. Shot done.
Got here.
Sleep,
Nice.
brother.
Oh, you ain't coming back. My ultimate's ready. Watching here.
Revealing area.
They found my trap.
One enemy remaining.
Nice.
Act
Switching
on my
sides.
intel. Don't
Match
give them time
point.
to reposition.
Snuff them out.
Scanning ahead.
Trap destroyed. Spike dropped. Someone's A.
Very fast. The Marines and Randolph in New York State. We had defeated one minor landing somewhere in Pennsylvania, eradicating the entire invasion force and seizing several surviving pieces of equipment for study. Though all the landings had been opposed, our forces were in slow but steady retreat at every location except Washington. The Baltimore landing had succeeded in
player
taking the city,
standing.
but the U.S. Army had held the alien offensive at bay outside Washington, D.C. The Air Force had paid a particularly gruesome toll for the successful defense of the city, flying combat missions even in the face of those new laser beam cannons. The offensive to take the political heart of the United States was halted.
30
Everywhere
seconds
else
left.
was fighting retreat, trading territory for time. The rest of the world didn't seem to be faring much better. Quickly in a world, no news from the
Switching
request to
sides.
be sent back to the front. It felt terrible, sitting and stuffing our faces, while we knew people were out there fighting and dying to stop the elf threat. We were approximately 75 miles behind the front, safe enough for aircraft to operate. When I checked the flight line, I
Overtime.
was surprised to
We
find
are
several
strong
rows of
because we are
F-35s
together.
parked there,
Don't forget
being
that.
serviced by technicians. That night, I heard the distinct sound of helicopters arriving and settling down somewhere outside the perimeter of the base. Something was going on, something big. We were going on the offensive. My suspicions were confirmed when the Major entered our temporary quarters with a broad smile on his face. Boys, how'd you like to save the world? Day 100. Despite there being 13 helicopters all loaded with troops, you could barely hear the sound of the specially modified.
Revealing area. Shock dart.
Spike planted. One enemy remaining.
Scanning ahead.
Reloading.
What do you
Switching
say,
sides.
bro? Ready to stretch
Match
your
point.
wings? I'll find them. Revealing area.
Spike down. Attacker spawn.
Spikes down.
Shock dart.
That's done. Careful now.
Scanning ahead.
Last player standing.
Really.
Switching sides.
Someone else will clean up.
I told the stars about you, 'cause they showed me the way, just like you do. I hope your dreams all come true, 'cause you deserve the world and more. What you've been
Blackhawks, outfitted with stealth coatings and all manner of electromagnetic disruption devices. Unless the aliens knew exactly where to look, they'd never see us coming until it was too late. Seated next to me, Crochet grinned at me. Despite our losses, spirits were up. Despite our nation being overrun by alien invaders, spirits were up. Despite the Earth's fate hanging on a thread, spirits